X. Give it up for James McAvoy. Then we've got Quicksilver himself, Evan Peters. Oh. Joining the franchise, Alexandra Shipp as Storm. Also new to the franchise, Lana Condor as Jubilee. We've got a new Cyclops in town. His name is Tye Sheridan. And one of the architects of all these great X-Men films, writer-producer Simon Kinberg. Welcome, everybody. This is a great piece of work, a great film. Welcome to the new guys in town, and welcome to the veterans. Do you feel like the elder statesman now? You were the new guy just a couple films ago, and now you're...
Yeah, I know. Everybody was like, hey, you're the young Charles Xavier. And then in the last movie, they're like, hey, you're the young Charles Xavier. And then in this movie, you're like, hey, you've got grey hair. and then you shave it off, and now you're bald. So how do you feel about being the old guy? And you're like, wow, it's gone from young Charles Xavier to that in 2 years.
Do you ever feel like, getting into your third X-Men film, does it feel comfortable by now? Was it comfortable from the start? Where are you at now? Because Charles has been through a lot through these three films.
Yeah, well, the fact that he has been through so much has meant that he's very different in every incarnation and in every movie that I've done. So I've never had the chance to get comfortable yet. I am comfortable with the people, and I'm comfortable with his history and who he is and where he needs to go. But in terms of actually playing him every time, it's a new challenge, because he's felt very much like three different people, in as much as you are 3 or 4 different people throughout your own life, So it's always felt challenging and new.
For you, Evan, I guess second among the cast here that has the most seniority. This is your second go-around as Quicksilver. Right. Certainly made an impact in a relatively limited amount of screen time in the first one with an amazing sequence. Yeah. Talk to me about coming back to the fold this time, expectations. Do you feel a little bit more at home this time around?
Yeah, definitely. Everybody's been super nice and welcoming, but there was a lot of pressure to try to top that first scene. But, the writers and everybody behind it are pretty brilliant, so they just tried to make it bigger and better.
So for our gaggle of new folks here, tell me what it's like to audition for an X-Men film. Is it different than your normal run-of-the-mill audition? What are your fond memories or traumatic memories of going up for this?
I could tell you a story.
Please.
Yeah, it's just like any other film. I think I sent in a self-tape, and then I ended up doing a screen test. But on my way to that first audition, after my self-tape, I was driving my buddy's car. He let me borrow it, and there was all this traffic. I was in L.A. and was coming down the 405, and it took me an hour to get to the audition, but I'm in traffic, and I'm really nervous because I'm going to an X-Men audition, and then I rear-ended the guy in front of me. Oh. Yeah, there you go. How about that for a plot twist?
I'm not sure if you have supportive cast members here or not, because I feel like you're ready to. I don't know what's happening while he's telling the story.
I'm basically the greatest storyteller of all time.
Ever.
We just love Tye's style when he's telling stories.
So
you know how no, I'm not going to slag you off. But no, we've been having.
I want to hear
Tye.
Because this has been going on all day long.
You know how like when you I don't know if any of you guys know professional sportsmen, but like they're really like normal people, really interesting, funny, intelligent, and all that kind of stuff. And then you get them on camera for an interview, and they go like, "So tell us about the game," and they go, "Well, it was." Can we have a round of applause for Tye Sheridan?
Tye Sheridan.
Now you know why Tye is sitting so far away from James. They need a little distance between the two of them.
He is gonna fuck me up.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
You kind of need that kind of attitude on an X-Men set. Everybody thinks they're the star. Everybody's competing, right?
It's so interesting because I am the star. So.
Storm is not to be trifled with in this film.
Never. Did you see me on GMA this morning?
I didn't. Now I'm a little frightened.
Really big. You should watch it.
Level of familiarity for you with this character. This is obviously a character we've seen before on screen, a huge character in the comic books. Going into a perspective part like this, a franchise like this, intimidating? Give me a sense of where you were at.
Yes, intimidating, but also invigorating, because it's something that us as actors in this film were really able to develop our characters, and it was really cool being able to say, like, this is how I want Storm to, look when she's flying, or this is how I want her to summon, the weather or the elements. It was really cool to be able to be a part of that creative process.
And for you, Lana, do you feel like I mean, the good thing is you have a camaraderie with a bunch of new folks in this. Like, you're not in this alone. Do you feel like the first day on set, was that scary or exciting to kind of be with like both folks that had experience and other folks like yourself that were new to it?
It was absolutely terrifying. I was crapping my pants the whole time. I think actually Brian, he came up to me the first day that we worked, and he was like, dude, like, you can smile. This is gonna be fun. And I was like, okay, promise, I'll smile. But yeah, it was really intimidating. But listen, everyone was super welcoming, and I never felt like I was like the odd man out.
Simon, for you, who, I mean, you've obviously helped steer these films in such a great way, and it's a difficult prospect in terms of like continually reinvigorating and reestablishing characters. Give me a sense of sort of what the task was at hand coming out of Days of Future Past, which kind of reset things in some ways, and you had a cast of thousands in that one, and somehow you go bigger in this one. What's the task at hand for something like this?
Well, we did want to go bigger in this one, and I think the only way to do that was to create introduce a new villain, because it's something we haven't done much in the franchise. After 7 or 8 movies, it's usually Magneto starting trouble, and so we felt like a new villain could give new stakes to the franchise, and that's what Apocalypse does. But I actually think that the challenge is pretty easy in that there are so many great comic book runs of the X-Men. It's not like I have to think of it from scratch. I just adapt it, and there's a certain amount of creativity obviously involved in that, but it's easier than when I'm sitting in a room staring at a blank page. There's a lot of great stories to choose from.
In addition to taking your questions in a bit, we've got a couple clips from the film, a couple sneak peeks for the audience. I think this first one features you, James, reuniting with someone we last saw in First Class. So let's check out the scene from X-Men Apocalypse. For you, James, and we alluded to this before, you've all, like, in these 3 films, Xavier's gone through a lot. Was there anything in particular you were excited about getting to in the arc of this character? I mean, it doesn't reveal anything to say in the trailer. We finally see him in that iconic mode, bald in the chair. Is that something you were excited about exploring and getting to?
Yeah, I was, like I say, in the previous 2 movies, I've been fortunate enough to portray parts of Charles I don't think we've seen a lot of in the books or in the cartoon or in the previous movies. In this, I was excited to finally sort of get to claim, I suppose as you saw it, Simon, to finally claim the icon and let our bunch of movies, our run of movies, own that part of Charles, that sort of patriarchal, sort of wiser, slightly harder figure than he has been until now. So I was excited for that. I kind of really didn't want to do that in First Class, and I really didn't want to have to do that in Days of Future Past, and that was fine because the scripts didn't ask me to go there. But I felt at the time it felt right now. Maybe that's because I'm a little bit older as well. So no, I was excited about that.
You should talk about how you actually had your hair shaved off.
Oh yeah. Well, we all did this thing where we were like, do we shave my head and wear a wig for most of the movie, or do we have my own hair and then wear a bald cap for like just the end of the movie? And we were like, nah, wigs are bad. We'll just do the bald cap. Wigs never look good. And then we tried this wig on, and I remember standing in front of you and Brian and Hutch, and everybody just going, it's a good wig. And we were like, fuck, I've got to shave my hair. So we just went, come on, let's go do it. So we went and shaved my hair, and just before we did it, was it Brian or you that said, let's get... Brian said, let's see if we can get Patrick Stewart on FaceTime. And so collectively, we FaceTimed Patrick Stewart. And yeah, but at the end of it, he was like, could you please bag that up and put it and send it to me? And you're like, wow, I didn't know Patrick Stewart was from India. Yeah, he is. He's from Jaipur. And so he didn't get it. It was intercepted by our director, who now has a bag of my hair in his safe in his home, which is slightly worrying.
You can be cloned. We could have thousands of McAvoys.
That's a terrifying prospect.
The world would be a better place.
Oh, thanks.
There you go. This one, like the last couple films, they're period films. It's weird for me to say that. Unlike some of the cast here, I lived through the 80s. Talk to me a little bit about...
Rope.
Talk to me a little bit about inhabiting the 80s wardrobe, the 80s vibe. Was that enjoyable? Did it feel like you're in a period film?
Absolutely. One of the scenes that we shot that I don't think ended up being in the movie, they actually transformed this whole mall into an authentic 80s mall. So they brought in like Cabbage Patch dolls and sold them. They brought in like the 80s version of Hot Topic. So I'm like sitting there because, I was born in 97. But I'm sitting there like, wow, this is awesome. I feel like I'm in a time machine. But and the clothes are cool too. And the hair. And what do you think?
Did you feel like you were
I think Alex had the coolest hairstyle. I don't even know if that's an 80s hairstyle, but
It is an 80s.
is it? I
hairstyle.
wasn't around in the 80s.
Yeah. It's super punk. Super classic punk storm.
Are you as depressed as I am, James? This is upsetting to me, this whole conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking about scoring some hardcore drugs tonight to get me over this. Just going to sink into I'm going to get in a cold bath and just do some hardcore drugs until I die.
Evan, for you, I alluded to this earlier. It's such a standout sequence in the first film. Their expectations are high this time around. You guys are going to love the Quicksilver. There's one in particular that I'm thinking of in this one that lives up, if not surpasses, the first one. Give me a sense of what goes into that kind of sequence in the film. How long does it take? Is it enjoyable, and knowing that the end product is going to be so special, or what?
Yeah, I mean, they're amazing sequences to be a part of. This one that we shot in the new film took a month and a half to shoot, and I worked 17 days, and it was for 2 minutes of film. So it's kind of a lot of work on one thing, but it is very rewarding and exciting to see it all cut together and with the special effects put in. It's a very there's motion capture, a lot of green screen, and a lot of people standing frozen while I run around them and move things that aren't there. But yeah, they plug it all in the end, and it ends up looking kind of mind-blowing. It's also exciting for me to watch too, because I don't really see what it is until the finished product. So it's really, really cool.
We had this thing on set where we'd all be hanging out and just chatting on set and talking, and 3 weeks go by, and since we last saw Evan, and then Evan is in a scene and he shows up. We're like, "Hey man, where you been?" He's like, "I've been here." And we're like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, I've been on second unit." We're like, "For 3 weeks?" Like, "Who with?" "Just on my own, man." And like, he was at one point, he was on second unit for 3 weeks. We did not see him. He was just working on his own on that sequence that lasted 2 minutes. It was crazy. We thought he'd gone home to LA or something like that.
It's very lonely.
Yeah.
He shot more days on this film than any other actor in the movie.
So some of the characters in the film, not necessarily represented here on stage, go through a hell of amount of makeup. I mean, Apocalypse's look, Jennifer Lawrence, obviously. Who tended to whine the most about what they went through every day?
Olivia Munn. 100% Olivia Munn. Hey, we say it with love, Olivia. If you're thanks very much. If you're listening, Olivia, we say it with love. We're only joking. No, she weirdly didn't look like she had a lot going on, but she had a really tough costume, right? Yeah, her costume's
100% latex and a corset, and I just felt bad for and heels, and gloves, and a sash, and extensions. She didn't look like herself at all.
Did you guys enjoy your costumes? Were they, just seeing them in fully fleshed out mode, like seeing yourself in front of the mirror must be such a trip for you.
It was fun, but I was in 2 corsets. One of them was a little superfluous, so like looking back, I'm like, maybe we'll nix that one. But yeah, I liked it. It was cool. I was kicking ass in heels. That's awesome. Like over the knee boots, just being like, whatever. Women can do that too. But then like in real life, walking like a robot because you can't really move in them. Sexy.
For your character and for you, Tye, I know you've talked a lot about this, I'm sure. We've obviously seen these characters in the films before. Do you feel like you just flush it out of your head? You don't even think about sort of the other interpretations? Or?
No, you definitely think about it, and I think you have to keep in mind what was done before and what the character is and who he is and who he's going to be in the future. But then you focus a lot on the origin and what's on the page then, and you do understand that it's a different version of the character. And so I think everybody was pretty much on the same page with that, and I think that's where, like James mentioned, he's played almost 3 different versions of Professor X. in the 3 films that he's been in. So I think this is a totally different version of Cyclops and Storm and some of the other characters that we've seen in previous X-Men films, but older.
Let's take a look at one more clip before we go to your questions out there. This one actually features Cyclops, a little bit of sort of discovering your powers in this. Check this out.
That's what I'm talking about. All right.
Nice. All right. I feel like that's a good segue into your amazing questions out there. We got our bunch.
Question in the front row.
You guys are rebuild, like James, you've done this already, but you guys are creating characters that we've already seen in the past. So for you guys, what has been more of the hardest, what has been the challenges in terms of bringing your own originality to those characters? And for, for the rest of you, you guys were the first iterations of your characters. So what have you brought for your characters in terms of comic book and what you wanted to show people in these movies?
Good question. Go first? Yeah, for me, I needed to know 100% of Halle Berry's Storm and to be able to pay homage to that, basically. Look at me, I'm stuttering like you, babe. But for me, I wanted the fans to have that kind of feeling that I had when I was watching her in the movies and watching the comics as well, and staying really true to the comics, but also trying to bring my own flavor to it, which is really hard because it's hard to relate to a mutant. I think about my first period, and I'm like, but if I had my period and then a tornado hit or a tsunami went down, bro. You can't relate to that. Wow. It's just a little bit different. But as far as I could go with it, I went deep.
James, you said it really nicely earlier when you said that no one wants to see, when we were at the other Q&A, but when you said no one wants to see the same character, the same version of the character over and over and over. And
yeah, it's a weird thing that I've been asked this for 6 years by fans and by journalists, and they seem surprised when I tell them that I didn't try to mimic or incorporate any of the acting things that Patrick Stewart did. And I'm always surprised when people are surprised or challenged or disappointed by that, because for me, if you've seen 3 or 4 movies that have been made since the year 2000, I don't want to see that same stuff done again by another actor. I want to see him portrayed differently. I want to see something different every single time. So yeah, I tried to look at what Patrick did, and I tried to do the exact opposite for the first 2 movies. This one, it's slightly different, because this time it is about claiming the final destination of the journey that we've been on for 3 movies, and really bringing that journey home. To be as perverse as I was being in the first 2 movies was only going to work if we actually came and took hold of the archetype and the icon that he is, I suppose, by the end of this one.
Quicksilver's actually been featured in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, played by different actors. And is that something for you? Is that something you have to do, something to do your own thing for that, or to be able to create your own type of character to be in this separate universe almost?
Yeah. Yeah, I basically, I don't know. I didn't know what to do. I was just I read the comics, some of the comics, not all of them, but I read some of the comics that had Quicksilver in them, and he kind of was a little arrogant or a little cocky or cheeky or whatever you want to call him. And so I kind of tried to do that a little bit, but I was way too over the top, and Brian said, calm down. So then we chilled him out a little bit, and then it just kind of became Quicksilver, and then that, coupled with the amazing special effects sequence, sort of made him into what he was. So it just sort of happened. I didn't really plan on it. And then Aaron's Quicksilver came along, and they did that, and it was very, very different. He was Russian. I mean, he had a sister. He had the blue streams behind him when he ran. All kinds of different things, and then they killed him.
Wow, what a brutal crowd, just cheering death.
It's strange, we were talking about that moment earlier, and I personally, when that happened on behalf of X-Men, was like, yes! And you can reveal whether you were or not yourself.
Yeah, I was pretty happy. I was excited.
when Jubilee's introduced in the 90s cartoon, she's at the mall shopping, and the Sentinel kidnaps her.
Mallrat, yeah.
And then she like breaks the VCRs or something. Did you watch those shows to get to understand your character better?
The cartoons?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wasn't that familiar with the X-Men franchise before being cast in it, but as soon as I got it, I read all the comics. Well, not all of them. But I tried to read as many comics as we could and watch cartoons. And I think all of us did. Yeah.
Anything in particular you guys are itching? Simon's right there. You can put the bug in his ear and let him know. What do you want to say?
I would love to get involved in the kind of mind battle that you can only get involved in with another psychic character. So like Psylocke or Emma Frost or any of those guys. That would be awesomeness.
Any other votes?
I want Storm to. Yes, I want Storm to become the matriarch that she needs to be.
Okay, there you
That's
go.
what I want to see.
All right. Check out X-Men Apocalypse. It's the biggest X-Men film yet. It's a real great piece of entertainment. Congratulations, guys. Always good to see
Thank
you
you
all.
very much. Thank
Check
you,
it out
everybody.
this Friday, guys. Thank you. Mr. X. Give it up for James McAvoy. Then we've got Quicksilver himself, Evan Peters.
Oh.
Joining the franchise, Alexandra Shipp as Storm. Also new to the franchise, Lana Condor as Jubilee. We've got a new Cyclops in town. His name is Tye Sheridan. And one of the architects of all these great X-Men films, writer-producer Simon Kinberg. Welcome, everybody. This is...
He has been through so much. Has meant that he's very different in every incarnation and in every movie that I've done. So I've never had the chance to get comfortable yet. I am comfortable with the people and I'm comfortable with his history and who he is and where he needs to go. But in terms of actually playing him every time, it's a new challenge because he's felt very much like three different people. In as much as you are 3 or 4 different people throughout your own life, you know. So it's always felt challenging and new.
For you, Evan, I guess second among the cast here that has the most seniority. This is your second go-around as Quicksilver.
Right.
Certainly made an impact in a relatively limited amount of screen time in the first one with an amazing sequence.
Yeah.
Talk to me about coming back to the fold this time.
And then I ended up doing a screen test. But on my way to the first audition after my self-tape, I was driving my buddy's car. He let me borrow it, and there was all this traffic. I was in LA and was coming down the 405, and it took me an hour to get to the audition, but I'm in traffic, and I'm really nervous because I'm going to an X-Men audition, and then I rear-ended the guy in front of me. Oh. Yeah, there you go. How about that for a plot twist?
I'm not sure if you have supportive cast members here or not, because I feel like you're ready to. I don't know what's happening while he's telling the story. A great piece of work, a great film. Welcome to the new guys in town, and welcome to the veterans. Do you feel like the elder statesman now? You were the new guy just a couple films ago, and now you're.
Yeah, I know. Everybody was like, "Hey, you're the young Charles Xavier," and then in the last movie, they're like, "Hey, you're the young Charles Xavier," and then in this movie, you're like, "Hey, you've got grey hair." and then you shave it off, and now you're bald. So how do you feel about being the old guy? And you're like, wow, it's gone from young Charles Xavier to that in 2 years.
Do you ever feel like, getting into your third X-Men film, does it feel comfortable by now? Was it comfortable from the start? Where are you at now? Because Charles has been through a lot through these 3 films.
Yeah, with the fact that
expectations, do you feel a little bit more at home this time around?
Yeah, definitely. Everybody's been super nice and welcoming, but there was a lot of pressure to try to top that first scene. But the writers and everybody behind it are pretty brilliant, so they just tried to make it bigger and better.
So for our gaggle of new folks here, tell me what it's like to audition for an X-Men film. Is it different than your normal run-of-the-mill audition? What are your fond memories or traumatic memories of going up for this?
I could tell you a story.
Please.
Yeah, it's just like any other film. I think I sent in a self-tape, and then